who's standing by with Matt.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Great cast on the day. I am joined by Matt after a fantastic win over TSM, an 0-2 week to now a 2-0 week, and it seems like something changed, an almost perfect game here. Why is the flow going so well for you guys?
I think, yeah, it's just as a team of mostly rookies, we have 3 rookies on our team, so I think the past, I guess, 7 weeks, we've just, kind of got the experience to get into the groove of just playing on stage, and yeah, I think we did well for the past 7 weeks.
Well, it's definitely starting to prove the results on the W column. Looking at a game tomorrow and actually all of your games coming up, the next 4, there's always a middle-of-the-pack team and one of the top-tier teams. Next week, it's actually going to be CLG as that top-tier team. How are you guys feeling about that matchup? They just took down Immortals.
Personally, I'm pretty excited because my goals is, yeah, to be on top, like in a top 2 position at the end of the season. So I'm not scared about playing against any other top teams for the rest of the split. Very, very confident moving forward.
The game here shows it. I got a final question for you, more of a personal one. You've been in that bot lane with Piglet now for the entirety of the split. How has it actually been playing with a former world champion and kind of learning from that and getting experience?
So there's, yeah, like having a world champion as your partner. I wouldn't say it's stressful. It's kind of like it's pretty much on me to mess up. Like it's not really Piglet's gonna mess up. It's I'm gonna mess up. So I have that sort of pressure, but it's definitely the best situation for me to get better as a player. So eventually I'll just be able to get to Piglet's level, and that's what I'm aiming for.
Well, it really seems like the synergy has been going up and up ever since the start of the split. Congratulations on the win. Best of luck next week. It's going to be a tough one. Right now, we are going to throw it over to the analyst desk for a quick interview with Dash and Weldon.
Thank you very much, Riv. That's right. We have the opportunity to speak with Weldon, who is our sports psychologist, our sports psychology trainer, rather. The distinction you just made known to me is important. So that'll be my first question. What is the distinction and why is it so important?
There's kind of 2 tracks into sports psychology training in sport or in esport, and one of them is through being a psychologist, and you kind of train in mental health. You get interested in sport and you go that way. And the other one is through coaching or being in sport. And those people don't often want to go back, like myself, to do a full training in how to deal with mental health issues. So, for example, in Finland, where I'm licensing, they'd have 2 separate tracks for sports psychology, and so I come from the sports side.
All right, so then let's explain to people who sports fans around the world probably don't have a very good understanding or are pretty unaware of what exactly sports psychology entails and what your goal is when you come into a team. So can you give me the Cliff Notes book cover version of what it is you do?
It's really quite simple. It's not very easy, but it's really simple. You just agree that there's pressure in any sort of performance, and we know that that doesn't ever really go away, whether you're a performer for 20 years or 10 years or 1 year, and just accepting that pressure and using it to drive your focus instead of unsettle your nerves in a way.
All right, so given that, I contract you to work with my team. You show up day 1 at the house. What is the first thing you're looking for and first thing you're looking to implement with my team in order to get us on the right track?
I do 2 things right away. I try to understand the motivational framework for each player, because you have different levels of ambition on any group, and they shouldn't be the same, and it's not necessarily going to. So trying to find out like what makes people tick then allows you to say like, well, if this is what you're motivated by, how much are you willing to sacrifice for it?
Ah, very interesting. Now, if we draw parallels between esports and traditional sports, I have to imagine, just based on the structure of esports, that there are some differences when it comes to your stance or your approach in working with these teams. Are there any major differences that you can outline between, say, football and esports, League of Legends specifically?
I think the biggest difference is I have more freedom, because in sport, the coach is responsible for a lot of what sports psychology entails, and ideally the coach is the perfect position to have that kind of expertise. But there's not a lot of 10-year experience, really well-established professional coaches in esport yet, and so I get to do a lot of the basic stuff that you would see on a sports squad, and eventually get to the more advanced stuff, which is just one-on-one focus training.
So given that you now have more freedom and there's less known, less certainty in this arena. Is that what would be, you would say, the biggest challenge for you so far in working in esports, or is there something else that's presented itself to you through your work that you see as being more difficult to overcome in esports versus something else?
I think the biggest challenge is that there's more transnational athletics or athletes in esport, and so dealing with bilingual teams is so different than what I'm used to, which is dealing with a monolingual squad. And so that actually is happening more and more in traditional sport as well.
You touched on something that I was about to get into, which is that you've already worked with multiple teams, and they all have very different makeups because it is still so much a wishy-washy thing in terms of team structure. So having worked with teams that are at the top of the standings, in the middle, in the bottom, you're working with challenger teams as well. Is there necessarily could you say there's a prescribed way to go about this for you, that you come in and it's a similar formula each time? Or are you walking in and saying that given these different circumstances, I have to create and craft entirely different approaches to working with these teams?
So I do definitely do a needs analysis when I go into each squad and see what are the biggest issues presenting, and it's been different, like you said, with every single unit. But I think that the tools that I use are quite similar.
Okay.
It's just where along the track are the athletes and how combined is the group, or how disparate are they and falling apart, and then we use the same tools, and I just apply them at a different point.
Now let's get into the nitty-gritty of it. You've worked with the team for a bit. You've established, you've fixed some areas and improved in others, this and that and whatnot. We're coming up to game day. What are the tools that you've provided to the players that allow them to overcome certain obstacles on their own without having you by their side, since ultimately they have to step onto the stage and perform without you there?
Right. So, for example, in a boot camp, like what I've been doing these last few weeks, all week we train trying to get the pressure that you feel on stage into the scrim environment, and then using that pressure to kind of amp up your focus. And then when it's game day, we try to do the same thing. We try to say, okay, now we're feeling the pressure. Now how do we turn that into focus and control your behavior without necessarily feeling super comfortable internally?
All right, and then what about inspirations? Are there coaches that you've looked at through traditional sports and sports history that you see having implemented sports psychology in a proper fashion in the past and having been successful, that you try and emulate now, working with these younger organizations?
Yeah, I really like Michael Gervais, who's the sports psychologist for the Seattle Seahawks and also Red Bull Elite Athletes. And he has a very similar approach to kind of what I do. And I also have the benefit of working with the Olympic swim coach in Finland. And he knows a lot about sports psychology and implements it in all his coaching, and has helped me see how basically the coaching role can be one of mentorship and also one of mental training.
All right, well, I mean, that's a lot for us to take in. I'm sure that I could use some help with my solo queue play, because God knows I tilt off the earth occasionally, so we'll talk about this after the interview. I want to thank you for your time, taking a moment to discuss with us what it is, sports psychology, and what a sports psychology trainer does for these teams.
My pleasure.
I know that you've worked with plenty of teams and they're performing. We've heard lots of words about you. Once again,
like Robert Yip says on Immortals, it's 99% the player and 1% the coach, so the credit really goes to the guys.
All right, well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, from the man himself. Most of the credit goes to the players. We've got more league action coming your way. Next up, Renegades takes on Team Dignitas. Games continue here in just 3.5.
What? Alright guys, I'm not sieging towers.
Summoner heal, Yellow Star flashes, one more hit will do it, and that's first blood!
Okay. Oriole down, Oriole down.
I can flash over. Yeah, I through. Nice.
Elise.
Nice.
Can we keep
Phoenix goes in on a Bjergsen, but he's pretty far up here. Again, the ward hop into the kick into the ulti, and he was chain CC'd the entire time. There's the Elise kill. The fight continues. In goes Dardoch, and he finds double if the Ezreal.
We can fight. 우리 하나 놀트. Just fight. Nice. Just kill.
Nice job, guys.
And let's go!
That was a clean game.
Holy shit!
Wow, we earned clean games here. Thanks, Weldon.
There's the win for Liquid, knocking down TSM.